Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm your host, Josh Taylor. Good to talk to you again on a Saturday night, and a busy Saturday indeed, right around Pittsburgh. You had Pirates going earlier today. You had West Virginia and Pitt in the backyard brawl at Acrisure Stadium going on earlier today. A lot of things happening at the same time, a lot of busy things to talk about, plus Steelers on the road with the Broncos tomorrow in Denver. So to help me talk about all those things and more, my guest this evening joins me in studio. You may see her on Friday nights on the Steelers High School Football Showcase. You may see her on Saturdays or in our Division III college football coverage. She does sideline for both of those. You may also see her on Every Blade of Grass with her and Cassidy Wood. Catch those episodes on YouTube. Suzie Cool joins me right now. Suzie, I'm running out of stuff to come behind all the things you're doing, so forgive me. But
yes, no,
a lot of stuff to list there on the resume, but all the same, it's fun. We love talking baseball too when it's you and I together. We'll get to that down the road because there's a lot to discuss there. But let's start with Steelers and Broncos. It looks like it's going to be the second straight game with Justin Fields starting at quarterback. Although, this time we know going in. This time last week, we had just found out maybe a day or two before the game was supposed to take place that it might be Justin Fields and not Russell Wilson. But now we know it's been a full week of Justin Fields in practice. How do you feel about the Steelers being able to do a little bit more on offense, having that full week of Justin Fields getting those reps with the first team?
I truly think that that's actually a positive for this team, right? I mean, they went out at the beginning of this week. Head coach Mike Tomlin said it. You know, we're preparing for this week as if Justin Fields is going to start from the get-go. Russell Wilson was kind of, an afterthought because they don't know what's going to be happening with his calf, and it came out that maybe that calf injury was a little bit worse than they thought. So the fact that they had this full week of practice where they knew that Justin Fields, or they were putting into everybody's mind, they were projecting in everybody's mind, hey, Justin Fields is going to be this starter. I feel like they're going to be a little bit more prepared whenever they go into Denver tomorrow. So I think that it's more of a benefit than anything. However, when people are asking Justin Fields about that this week, he just says, I prepare every single week for the same thing as if I am starting. And he really thinks that that is helping his mindset this season, because I really do think that it is going to be up in the air all year, especially when Russell Wilson gets back.
Now, on top of that, this time last week, we were talking about the situation on the offensive line. We were talking about how Troy Fautanu had been a full participant for a couple days, but it was probably not going to be him starting at right tackle. It was Broderick Jones. This week, Fautanu gets the full week practicing, kind of like Justin Fields, full week practicing with the ones. Looks like he's going to be starting at right tackle. So now the focus is on the other side of the offensive line, whether it's Broderick Jones or Dan Moore, whom I might add, last week, Dan Moore acquitted himself pretty well against Atlanta. I thought the offensive line did their job fairly well. Maybe not as solid in the run game or as consistent, but as far as pass protection went, I thought they did okay. How does that look now with, at least with Fautanu, we know he's starting on the right side. And whether it's Moore or Jones on the left side, how much more confident do you feel about what this offensive line can do now with those changes?
We talked about this last week. I think right now with the offensive line, really everything, again, it's kind of like the Justin Fields, Russell Wilson situation. Everything is really up in the air, because what can this offensive line really produce after last season not being so great? So right now you have all these puzzle pieces that you're trying to put in the correct places. Fautanu at right tackle, who's going to take over at left? Is it going to be Dan Moore, who made himself a case last week, or is Broderick Jones going to go back to his old position? Now, do you give Broderick Jones a game or two off so that he can, heal up a little bit, get back to that left tackle, and then it's him and Fautanu, and it's a really solid offensive line? I'm not sure if that's what you do, but then you also have that healthy option in Dan Moore being the backup. Or you could look at it as Broderick Jones is that healthy backup for either side, either the right or left tackle position. Really, again, I think that this is a good thing. I think everything is looking really positive for the Steelers going into tomorrow.
I've heard a lot of negative pushback on that, because they're trying to figure out, they should just pick two guys that are going to start. It's not really that simple, because during training camp, all three guys were healthy, all three guys were getting reps. It wasn't that big of a deal. But then Fautanu injures himself during the preseason, and then Jones gets banged up. So you got two guys that are healthy, and it was the matter of, okay, whoever's the healthier guy's going to go. It was Jones for week one. Now it might be Fautanu for week two, but the fact that you have that kind of depth, you got a veteran guy who's been starting for you for a few years, you got a couple first-round picks, I know people are looking at it as a bad thing. No. I see that as a good problem.
I think that it's good to have these options, especially when last year you might not have had those options, right? So to have options week 2 of the 2024 season for the Steelers on the offensive line, that's a good thing. And again, we don't know what Fontanu really can do. Is he going to go out there and immediately produce? Or Dan Moore said in an article this week with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, you know, Fontanu does have a little bit of nerves. It's going to come down to his teammates really calming those for him whenever he does get that first NFL start. So are those nerves going to overtake him whenever he does start at right tackle that first game? We don't know what he's going to produce. So until he goes out there and he shows us, it's good to have those 3 options for that tackle position.
Another thing we talked about last week, if Fontanu was to get that first start last week against Atlanta, which he didn't, but there was the whole thing of being on the road in a hostile environment that Mike Tomlin likes to talk about. But now we're talking about an even more hostile environment if we're talking about Mike Tomlinisms in Denver, because it's a lot tougher place to win in Denver, a lot louder crowd in Denver than it is in Atlanta. This might be an even bigger challenge for Troy Fontanu to make his first start, but we will see how this goes. 4:25 kickoff. You can watch it over on KDKA tomorrow afternoon. We will take a break. When we come back, we're taking your phone calls. 412-575-2600. We're taking your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. Plus, we have our own tweet of the night. Stick around for all of it. We got to start with Chuck in Uniontown. Chuck, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Well, first of all, cease your put up your dukes.
Beat Youngstown State. Love it.
There you go, Chuck.
Anyway, nice to talk to Josh and Suzie tonight. If the Pirates don't win as many games as they did last year, do you replace both GM and field manager? Also, please win tomorrow for number 21, still my favorite athlete of all time.
It's hard to argue with the latter point, Chuck. It's hard to argue with doing anything in Roberto Clemente's honor, because that just, when you think of a human being who was such a great athlete, but also was just such a humanitarian and just a great human soul, you want to do everything you can to make anything you do in his honor a project worth doing. But to his point, and to answer his question, I feel like after a season like this, someone has to be held culpable, right, Suzie? You look at this, and I was one of those people that thought after that collapse against the Cubs, I felt like there was really nothing left that could redeem Derek Shelton other than the fact that he is a very, very likable guy. But that can only redeem you so long. It could only carry you so far. I felt like the bullpen issues, that collapse against the Cubs when they blew that huge lead, and just the tumble they took after the trade deadline, it just felt like that was the opportunity to be seized. And you can't get rid of everybody, but you got to get rid of somebody. It feels like Ben Cherington, he's going to get a little bit of rope because of drafting Paul Skeens and what that's become. But it feels like if there's anybody that's going to be the guy that's sacrificed, it's probably Derek Shelton.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm thinking it would be Derek Shelton too. And honestly, I feel like he also knows he's on the hot seat. I mean, we saw him kind of blow up at the media last week, and I feel he's feeling the pressures of what this season really is posing on him as they're nearing the end. And, you know, they might have just won 5 out of their last 7 games. However, they can't go on another losing streak, or people are going to keep coming at him, and he's going to continue to feel those pressures. So I don't know. If you have to take somebody out, I would say it's probably going to have to be Derek Shelton. He's going to have to take that heat, which is unfortunate. But you also have to think back, what is happening with this group? The last 2 seasons, they've started really, really well, and then the wheels just completely fall off. So is it Derek Shelton and his staff are really leaning into this team in spring training at the beginning of the season, and then they see that they're on a heater, and then they let them go, and the training's not as serious? What is happening as a whole? I think that there needs to be a deeper dive than just really being like, yeah, it's just Derek Shelton. I don't think it's just Derek Shelton. There have to be other pieces.
Yeah, and there's things they got to sort out. They got to sort out the third base situation. They got to figure out what they're going to do at first base.
Yeah.
They got to figure out what they're going to do in the middle infield. I think the only thing that might actually be absolutely settled is the fact that Brian Reynolds is going to be in your outfield and probably who your 5 starting pitchers are. Those are probably the 2 things that are cemented, and maybe Joey Bart at catcher. The rest, you got question marks that you got to answer pretty quickly and figure them out before you get to spring training. Let's go to David in Finleyville. David, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh, thanks for taking my call. I want to ask you a question and your guest. Who would you feel comfortable being a quarterback and going to the playoffs and win you a couple games, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? Thank you.
The healthy one. The healthy one that doesn't turn the ball over. That's the one I want leading this team in the playoffs. And I'm going to say this for a particular reason. Go back through this team's most recent playoff history. Go back 5 or 6 years and look at every playoff game they won, pretty much since they won their last playoff game in 2016. You know what the issue's been? Turning the ball over more than the other team. Give me the guy that doesn't turn the ball over and is healthy. That's the one I want. I know it seems like a cop-out, but that's the thing that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever gets the most reps with this team and who everybody is most comfortable with. However, that also goes up in the air as to what opponent they're going to be facing in the playoffs, right? Is it going to be a team that's going to, do worse against like a pass type of offense or a run type of offense? I think there's a bunch of factors that go into that. I don't think that you can just peg somebody to take you through that playoff run. The only thing that I do think Russell Wilson does have a leg up on Justin Fields is the fact that he has seen those playoff runs. So that's just something that Russell Wilson brings to the game that Justin Fields doesn't. So is Justin Fields going to crack under that pressure, or is he going to be able to lead?
I think you bring up a good point because you have experience versus athletic ability.
Yeah.
And what Justin Fields lacks in experience compared to Russell Wilson, he makes up for it in athletic ability, and we saw that last week. He turned some plays that should have been complete negatives into absolute positives, and he got third down conversions, and they moved the chains. They were 8 of 17 on third down, basically 50% if you take away that last third down opportunity in the fourth quarter. We're trying to kick it and get out of there, but it does come back around to the fact that who is the guy that makes this offense the most efficient, keeps the chains moving, and keeps you an opportunity to at least score, or at the very least, put yourself in a position where you're better off ahead of the other team when that clock says 0 after 60 minutes. We got to take another break. We'll talk a little bit more when we come back. Stick around.